It might sound crazy, but the fastest way to get things done is to actually treat yourself like an employee. It sounds weird, right? But trust me, this manager-employee framework has completely changed the way I get things done. I've spent the past 5 years experimenting with productivity systems. Some worked for a while, but most failed. Now, I'm far from perfect, but this one change has helped me stay on top of university, studies, societies, gym, personal life, pretty much everything that I have to manage. And today I want to show you exactly how it works, because if it worked for me, it can probably work for you. The hardest part about moving from high school to university was that there wasn't anyone to tell me what to do anymore. In high school, your life is fully structured. You have a timetable. You know what you're doing every day. University, there's pretty much none of that aside from the classes that you'd have to go to. In uni, you're pretty much on your own. So I tried the usual productivity hacks. I would time block my schedule. 9 to 11 a.m. would be, 200 Enki cards. 11:30 to 1 would be getting my meal prep sorted for the rest of the week. 3 to 5 would be tutoring. I tried time blocking, but then, it worked for like a week. And then after a week, I was like, I don't have to do my Enki cards 9 to 11. I could just watch Minecraft Manhunt instead. It just kind of died. And then I also tried other stuff like giving myself a to-do list, weekly to-do list, daily to-do list. They were just really tedious, and also I didn't really stick to them after a week. Like the novelty of having a to-do list to follow died after a week, so they weren't sustainable in the long run. Now, I thought a lot about why this was, and the reality is it's because there was no one telling me what to do. There wasn't anyone to literally sit me down and be like, today you have to do this stuff. Like a to-do list worked, but it was just a list of stuff, right? Like I could just not do it. There wasn't like any accountability or sense of responsibility for me to follow anything. So what I've just told you guys is a problem, right? And every problem has a solution, and the solution to this problem was a lot easier than you'd think it to be. It's to literally tell myself what to do. I know, crazy, right? But it's that little mindset shift in having that manager-employee framework that really changed it. So this leads me to the topic of the manager. I gotta use the marker here, so let's use this. All right, let's take a look. So we have the manager, right? I just spelled that wrong, crazy. We have the manager. What does the manager do, right? What is the role of the manager? The role of the manager is to tell the employees, right? The employees what to do. He has to tell the employees, and in terms of telling the employees what to do, he has to do a few things. He has to figure out their shift times, and he has to figure out their tasks. And if he wants to get paid properly and make his hour or yearly salary count, he needs to do this as quick as possible. So that's our goal as well. When we become the manager, that is our goal. Now, when do we become the manager? We become the manager at night. So around 5 to 10 minutes every night, we become the manager. And our goal is to assign shift times and the tasks for the employees. Who are the employees, you ask? Well, all right, so who are the employees? Well, let's take a little trip to the other side of the whiteboard and let's take a look. These are my employees, right? Ignore the writing, it's kind of bad handwriting, but I've split up my life into 6 separate sections. We have university, which has to deal with university classes and university dedicated study, extracurricular stuff like what I'm doing right now, cardio, gym. Yes, I've separated these two because I genuinely hate cardio, and if I do it, it's worth enough celebration to give it its own little slot. I have life admin for things like going to the doctor, grocery shopping, cleaning the house, and tutoring, because that's what I do for work. So I've split up my life into 6 separate sections, and each of these guys will become their own separate employee. So tying this back into the concept of the manager who has to manage these employees, what he has to do is he has to assign shift times and tasks for each of these employees. So instead of me blocking my time out 9 to 11 a.m. and I have to do university study or Enki cards, I instead clock in as an employee with the only goal of doing these Enki 200 Enki cards, let's say, for the thorax, right? If I am the university employee or the employee for study, the study employee, let's say, my only goal is to get those Enki cards done. The cool part about this is that during the night, I like to think like a manager. I don't clock in like an employee. I only think about managing the different stuff that I have to do the next day. And it's not too tedious. Literally just take 5 to 10 minutes to just overview the things you have to do. And if it probably doesn't come into your mind during those 5 to 10 minutes, it's probably not that important. So what do I do in the morning then? Well, in the morning, I clock in like the employee. Now, I like to think about my experience working in JB Hi-Fi. So every time I would clock in, it would literally just be to get the tasks that I have to do done, which would either be sales or packaging at the back of the store. And I would literally not care at all about my work after my shift finished. That is the mindset that I like to take as the employee when I clock in for work the next day. So let's say that 9 to 11 a.m. my goal is to get through 200 Enki cards. Instead of just blocking out 9 to 11 a.m. on my calendar with no stakes, I like to have that mindset shift of clocking in like an employee. I am the study employee, and my only goal is to get the 200 Enki cards done. Now, because I clock in like an employee, I don't have to care about the tasks of the other employees during the day. You know, I don't have to be worried about the burden of having to clean the house later that day because that's not my job. Once I clock in, I have my work to do. Once I clock out, that's it, I'm done, right? That job of cleaning the house is up to the life employee. So you can see how it's very freeing, just that very little mindset shift. It seems very obvious, but it actually does a huge role in freeing up my mind. There's no negotiations, no overthinking, and no moving your tasks around. It's like a real job. You don't argue with your boss over your shift, you just show up and you do it. Now, here's why it actually changed everything for me. It's not really about the tools, right? There's time blocking, task lists, calendars, they all work in theory, but I always found ways to dodge them. This isn't my first take doing this, and you're gonna know that it's not my first take because you're gonna see how I've written stuff on the table already. But the difference here is with the mindset. I just spelled, okay, you know what, you're gonna have to stick with what I wrote here. The reason why this works is that I treat my day like I'm clocking in for a shift. And when I clock in for a shift, it suddenly feels real. There's a sense of urgency, there's a sense of accountability. That is the thing that I was lacking with all of these other systems. Right, if I skip something, I'm not just going to be like, oh, you know, I'll do it later. I can't skip something like that because it's a shift. You know, I don't get paid if I don't do it during my shift time. And that tiny little mindset shift or mental shift created the pressure and accountability I needed to actually get things done. And like I said, it's super freeing because I don't have to care about the other tasks that I have to do during the day because that's not my job. Right? If I'm clocking in as the study employee, it's not my job to care about what's happening with the society. It's not my job to care about what's happening with the coursework. It's not my job to care about what's happening with cleaning the house. It's my job to get the study done and then I clock out. Now, this also makes me less prone to burning out. The reason is because I think burning out has to do with, and this is just my opinion, but I'm almost certain that burning out has to do with you overexhausting yourself with worry and overexhausting yourself with different things to think about. And because I've set up mental barriers between the different aspects of my life, right? I've literally split up my life into these 6 separate sections, and there's a literal barrier between each of them, right? No employee does more than one task that they're assigned, right? If I'm a life employee, I only do the tasks relevant to life. So because I've split up my sections like this, it actually creates a mental barrier and prevents me from thinking about or overthinking about all the different things I have to do in life. And that prevents me from being burnt out, and it allows me to work even longer because I don't feel like I'm working 8 hours a day, right? I feel like I feel like 4 different people that just did 4 different things, each for 2 hours long. Right, so it only feels like I worked for 2 hours. Not really, it definitely feel like I worked for more than 2 hours, but I don't get burnt out and I'm less likely to seek out the procrastination efforts because I don't feel like I worked 8 hours. Now, here's the best part about it, right? The best part is that this framework is flexible. Employees can have as many shifts as they want, and the tasks don't have to fit into neat hourly blocks. Trust me, if you change this, it in itself will make the biggest difference. Like, it's okay where you can start work at 8:03 p.m. It's not that deep. So it's that understanding of that tasks don't have to fit into neat hourly blocks. You don't have a say in what you do the next day because you're an employee. Only the manager has a say in what you do, right? Your only job is to follow the role of the tasks assigned to you by the manager. And this means that you don't have to waste time sitting trying to deliberate what you have to do. You don't get stuck with a vague to-do list, and you don't feel guilty by running over a little, because if you go overtime, then it happens, right? You end up going overtime somehow when you work as an employee. But no one ever wants to go overtime, because let's just say that there's no paid overtime hours, right? If you go overtime, it's on you. So you are sort of conditioned to stick to your shift times and get things done, because then you're at risk of getting fired. So something like that, right? It's all the analogy that makes the mindset shift. The other part is the flexibility that I want to tie in, is that when you're the manager, you aren't plagued by this desire to procrastinate. Because being the manager is fun. It's like you have creative liberty over someone else's life for the next day. And you get to just mess around with it. Technically not mess around, but try and create a schedule to ideally get things done. And you don't typically try and search for areas to procrastinate or areas to have free time when you're the manager, right? You have the creative liberties to design the schedule however you want it to be for the next day. And the thing is, right, oftentimes we have random stuff that pops up the next day. And if that happens, that's cool. It happens, right? You just take 5 to 10 minutes that day in the morning or whenever it happens to just reorganize your schedule, right? The manager's role is to, be able to juggle things around and to fit things in different places. And again, you're so free that when you're the tutoring employee, for example, you only care about tutoring. You don't have anything else plaguing your mind because the manager has already done the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to care about everything else happening in your life. You only need to focus on what your goal is as that employee, because the manager has taken care of it for you. Now, I've tested this with so many different tools. I used to write everything down. That worked for a little while. It was cool to have a little notebook to write everything down in. I tried using whiteboards like this. That was cool as well. I was able to color in the timelines. That was pretty sick. It worked for a while, but it got boring. I used to block everything out of my calendar. That was pretty sick as well. You'd zoom out into the weekly view and then you'd see all the different colors and everything. What I do now is a lot more simple. I track my shifts in an app. It is a paid app. There's a free version of it, but they only allow 3 timelines. The app itself is also called Timelines. They only allow 3 timelines, so 3 employees. So I just paid the $60 for a year. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Again, you have the freedom. Just however you want to track it, you can track it. I'm just telling you what I do. Okay, so I thought I'd take a little bit of time to go through how I actually use the system. So this is like an example. This is not actually what it would look like, but I have a notebook here. I just bought it from Officeworks. This is sort of an example of how I would lay out my day, or what the 5 to 10 minutes would even look like. So you can see on the Tuesday, the night before, and I've crossed out Monday and Wednesday because I don't use this notebook anymore. But this is what I used to use. You can see I've laid out 4 hours of tutoring. I've got 4 students for 4 hours. So that's the tutoring employee. That's what he would do. And then I've got RAMI and CDM. That's relational anatomy and clinical diagnostic microbiology. Those are my 2 uni subjects. So I've got to do 200 Enki cards that day and the week 5 lectures and overview my GI tract infections. And then for the life employee, I've given him the task of cleaning the house, only vacuuming because the mopping had already been done, and also bringing in the bins. And then the UB plus A here is upper body and arms. That's what I'm going to be hitting in the gym. So you can see how I've laid everything out. Now, I personally don't time block anymore just because I already time myself using the app. So we'll look at the app now. This is sort of what the app looks like. You can see they've got like a pie chart, and they've also got a little bit of timeline area here. In terms of splitting everything up, you can see how everything's split up into 8 different sections. I've just split mine up arbitrarily. And if I go into the events, you can sort of see how you can split it up into events. You can view it in terms of a timeline. So it could be a pie chart. You can view it as, I don't even know what this is. Wait, you can view it as a bar chart as well, I think. Yep, there we go. You can view it as a bar chart so you can see where you're spending your time. But essentially what I've found is that when I'm timing myself, I'm a lot more aware of what I'm doing, and I'm a lot more aware when I waste time because I'm constantly timing myself. So I'm in the pursuit of having clocked into a shift. So it just keeps me on track of stuff, or keeps me on top of stuff and prevents me from procrastinating. So yeah, that's pretty much the system that I use. It's just this notebook and my phone. You don't have to use the app. you could just literally time it on the phone. Before I got the app, I would just use the normal clock time and just start a stopwatch and just time however long it took. But I just found like this app was easier. I don't enjoy having to pay $60 a year for it, but it does the job. So that is just a general overview of how I use the system and make it work every day.